there's a lot to be gained by that interaction, and you really this social isolation of COVID just shows how impactful that interpersonal relationships are in maintaining your sense of direction in life, and I think that would probably be one of the more impactful things.
Welcome to the Modern BioPharma podcast. The world of today's medicines is big, complex, and constantly changing. Our goal is to give you insight into the people that are manufacturing the medicines people need every day, whether it is the people taking care of these facilities, or those building them, or those maintaining the quality and integrity of every dose that is delivered to the patient. We interview the people that are making it happen and give you a chance to get to know them while we're at it. Thanks for saying hi. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Modern BioPharma podcast. This is Jesse. I'm here today with Brian Duffy from IPS up here in the Boston area. How you doing today, Brian?
Doing great, Jesse. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to have you on today. This is our second try. We had some technical difficulties last time, so it's all right. It's a good chance to hang out with Brian again. Brian, you are at home battling COVID like the rest of us from your living room, home office, what have you.
Kids'
doing
bedroom.
All right? Or kid's bedroom. We're at kid's bedroom today.
As you can tell by the bunk beds I got going on over here.
All right. Yes.
Yeah.
Bunk beds. I got my. You can't see it. I got my my couch over here in case my wife wants me to sleep somewhere else. So
nice. I have to evict him early if I got early morning calls from his bunk bed so I can get going.
You know what? We all need a quiet place to be during the day. So I'm glad you got one. I got Brian on today. We're excited to just talk to a bunch of different things. But as usual, we want to just sort of get to know who Brian is. So if you could, Brian, could you just tell me a little bit about who you are, where you're from, what you've done, things like that?
So I started off in biotech after college with a microbiology degree, really working a lot of QC micro, and I used a temporary job type company to help myself to find positions around the country because I had a little bit of a travel bug. So I started off with some positions around here in Genetics Institute and a couple of the heavy hitters, and then I traveled out to California, a couple of buddies of mine, and lived in San Francisco for a while. And after a bit of traveling and working temp jobs, I found I was more interested in equipment than I was in the assays I was running, and lab work didn't seem to be my calling. So I figured I'd go back for engineering, and I ended up working at Alkermes and getting accepted into the Tufts Masters Mechanical Engineering degree. So I went back for mechanical, and Alkermes was really my first engineering experience. I learned a lot at Alkermes. It was a neat company back in the early late 90s, early 2000s. It was when biotech really had a big jump in the market and a lot of investment, and it was exciting to be in Cambridge. I learned a lot about different unit ops at that company because they did a lot of different manipulations of their products. So gained a lot of process knowledge there, and then decided to get more into a conventional biotech process engineering role. So I went to Mass Biolabs and working for the state of Massachusetts, and helped build the Mattapan plant. And so that was my second introduction to sort of big project life, and that got exciting to me. I liked that big project build out. I worked corporate global engineering in Wyeth and site engineering at Pfizer when Pfizer took over. And then I made my way over to Genzyme for some more big build out work, and I was there for 8 years. Genzyme into Sanofi was a big part of my career. I grew from project work into managerial, doing management and associate director of process engineering, supporting the Framingham site, and really learned a lot about what it takes to put drug product out in a biotech environment. It was a great growth experience for me there. Towards the end of my time there, I wanted to get back into project work. So I got asked to be the design lead for the integrated continuous biomanufacturing facility that they put in 8 New York Ave. So worked that project and really enjoyed all aspects of engineering in that. And that drove me to want to stay with projects. So I decided to go over to the design side, and now I'm with IPS. Been there for 2 years. Probably a long-winded answer, more than you were looking for.
Yeah. So what's funny is, you've been in this space longer than I have. And, I hear about, like Alchemies is one of those companies. They're still around, right? But they're not, it seems like there was a lot of people that were at Alchemies once upon a time. And maybe, I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if they were a lot bigger back in the early 2000s. Do you know?
I don't think it really was. It was just a unique company at the time. It was between 200 and 600 people when I was there.
Okay. Yeah.
But you're right. The relationships that I made there, the people that I know there, I still talk to from time to time and see them at trade shows. And it was a really fun time to be young. I was living in Somerville. I could either walk or ride my bike or ride my motorcycle over to, across town to where I worked. And it was, you're right there on the river and go for a jog on your lunch break. And there's so many restaurants around. And it was a real good team environment. It was exciting. It was a startup company. Richard Pops is like this incredible CEO. And when he speaks, everybody gets excited and just wants to do their job. And, it was an interesting time to be there. I was there through 9/11. It was just a really, formative time in my career, formative time in biotech in general in Cambridge. So it was great to be a part of.
Yeah. And since then, obviously you've been at some other big ones, right? With Mass Biologics is in the Boston area. All these places that you've been at are super well known and, doing a lot of things that, get seen all over the world, right? So you were at Genetics, which, now everybody knows is Pfizer. It's a really big facility here. And then Sanofi or Genzyme, Sanofi now, obviously, they're very influential in the biologic space up here in New England. If you are in our space, everybody knows both of those sites very well. So yeah, you've been able to touch quite a bit. And now IPS, who doesn't know IPS in our space, right? So everybody knows IPS really well. So
what's interesting about it is every time I leave a role and I look back at it, I'm like, geez, maybe I should have stuck that out. I had such a great group of people I was working with, and I really enjoy the working environment. And it's the truth though, having been able to work in those different locations and those different teams, my network is really big, and there's an awful lot of people that I see when I go to a show that I'm like, I get to relive those times,
Glory
whether it's
days.
starting up 74 New York Ave cell culture or building Mattapan. There's just a group of people that I experienced that period of time with that. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great.
Great connections.
Yeah, and I've gotten to get to know you over the last couple of years. I think I met you when you were at Genzyme still. So that's when I first met you, and now met you and see you at a lot of things as part of IPS. So
you were with Steris, right, when I first met you?
Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
and
I was at Steris, I think, when I first met you, and
Avaqua, and did you go right to Avaqua?
We don't need to go through my whole list.
Oh, that's fun. Come on, let's dig on your path. You've had similar experiences.
And they've all been growing, opportunities to grow and learn the business in a different way. But I've been on the supplier vendor side the whole time rather than on the owner side like you've been. But I think the first time I met you, I got to meet Joe Reale, who I got to have on the show as well, and he's done great since leaving Genzyme. He did great there, obviously.
Everybody knew that guy was going to do great when we first talked to him in an interview.
Right.
So
what the heck?
Yeah, he's just got it. He's got it.
So awesome. Well, we have a list of questions here that I think you just went through half of them. So one of the things that we talked about ahead of the show, which I think is worth talking to, is something that you've seen change since being in the industry, your whole history, and now you're sort of delivering it as part of IPS, but how cleanrooms had developed over the years, and your experience, I think, now with with Icon. I think there's a couple things in there, but if you could you just sort of walk us through sort of how that's grown over the years, and some of the things that you're seeing sort of develop and really improve a lot of ways how we can deliver projects on time and quickly.
Definitely. So most of my experience is process equipment, and that's where I've spent most of my time focused. But all around me, every time we're working with the process, we're working in that clean room environment. It's we're developing our process connections through the walls of this environment. We're developing how we're going to deliver this, and it seems like with a lot of these new products that are coming down the line, it's even more important that these products are delivered quicker, and these projects have to happen on a faster timeline. And the whole approach to the project scheme is different. So the first time that modular clean rooms first came on the scene, I think, at least from my exposure, was Pharmadual, and that company, I think in their first inception, went really big with their ideas, and they were doing massive plants and building out these modular systems, and so that they could slice them up and carton them up and crate them all over the world. You could do your whole FAT, which would cover most of your testing up front, and you had a real good idea that when you got it in place, it was going to work. But I think the project life cycle has changed and has been accelerated so much recently that it's even more of a feasible way to go. And we're working with GCON a lot, and they have they seem to focus on a lot of different sized environments. We just did a 3-pod environment for Repligen, Joe Reale, down in Marlborough, and the intent of that was in a very short time, less than 6 months, we wanted to have this system up and running from PO sign off, and so that they could move their ATF manufacturing into there, which is one of their premier products for harvesting their bioreactors. So what we were able to do by buying these modules and sliding them in and piecing them together and doing a fair amount of conceptual testing and work up front for putting the utilities in that were to support them, to accelerate that timeline. There's no way we could have done it on a stick-built system. We've worked with a lot of great stick-built companies, a lot of modular on-site clean room manufacturing companies. They can work at a certain pace, and this just eclipses it. We can concentrate on one aspect of the job, which is fitting out the environment for the receipt of these pods. In the meantime, these pods are being built to specification, down in Texas, and we can go down and check on them and verify that they're coming along at the pace that we need them to. It frees up the schedule to really create a lot of time savings.
So that's a pretty, it's a really interesting development. I know I have a brother that works in the building industry, more on like the residential side, and I remember hearing about how they do that with homes, modular homes, and they do the same thing, and they get these, beautiful homes that we're not talking a trailer park, we're talking beautiful homes that they just build in a factory, and they can cut them up and put them together right at somebody's house. And you're like, how does it seems impossible, but if you think about it, that environment of putting stuff together is probably a more reliable environment than more of a site, right, where you might still have site work going on and some other things.
It's true. Those modular homes, my buddy has one too, and they have to put extra ventilation in them because they're so sealed up and tight.
Right.
And it's beautiful. It's got a farmer's porch. It's a beautiful house.
You can't tell looking at it that's
no,
what it was, right? No.
It's just very, very well built. But yeah, it's the same concept. These when you go down to GCON and you see the environment they're working in, and the way that they do their framework, and the way that they have all of their systems are being designed and engineered on site and built on site by their own people. Whereas you go into a stick-built environment, then you got to go around and get multiple bids on multiple subcontracts. You have to have them collaborate, and most times these trades know each other and have worked in the same environment. A lot of times they have it, so they're coming in, they're modeling it in the environment it's multiple hands in this model that are working on building these systems, and they're tap dancing in each other's environment and creating situations that you got to work out how they aren't impacting each other. If it's all the same team down in the same environment, building in the same workspace for the same crew, then you can simplify that project. So it's a different thing to see. And we've also started to collaborate with GCon on prefab design. So we've already laid out the design. It's something that Tom Pino and IPS had put together. It's called Icon, and for a certain base of a need, if it's a cell culture suite, if it's a purification suite, if it's a gene or cell therapy suite, they've got a basic layout, and you don't touch that layout, and we can even accelerate it faster because the engineering's already been done, the layout's already been done. So it's couple fit and finishes questions, and we're off and running.
So that sort of corresponds, like, so I'm a vendor of water equipment. So we have our designs that are sort of normal, common, here's our 10 GPM, our 20 GPM, our 30 GPM, boom, ready. It's got all the components picked out. If you order that, it's easy, right? I got all the drawings, everything's ready to go. If you want to, specify everything on that unit, it's going to take a little bit longer. It's going to cost a little bit more. It's going to, there's just things that come up when you change. Right. So you're basically putting together with this Icon system, like full suites. You're doing the whole process is like, boom, done. You know where the bolt's going to go in the floor already.
Right. It's an off-the-shelf system, and it's to the point where if you wanted to put your process equipment in there ahead of time, they're doing that down in Texas now. You can get all your process equipment in there. You can test all your process equipment in place while the environment's being built. They'll put up a Butler building. They'll get all the environment ready, and then they can just cut it up, ship it up, and slide it all in, and off and running. It's a pretty impressive.
So there's always, costs and whatnot associated with things like this. So when, if you're talking to a customer about this, what's maybe a typical issue they might have with it? Because it seems awesome, right? It seems like you're just taking away a ton of guesswork. You're taking away a lot of variables that would impact a project, because you don't have all that overlap. That is what creates so much of the friction inside of a project, right? And ultimately creates more compounding variables that impact schedule, cost. So what kind of things are people bringing up as
well? There's a couple.
Is it just because it's new, or
Well, no. There's a couple of compromises you have to make to jump into that environment. One of them is you need to agree on locking down what you're going to do and not touching it again. But you have very limited ability to adjust design once they're off and running. They're building framework. They're building, they've modeled their systems through it. And excuse me. They really would like you to keep your process changes to a minimum, even more so than you would in a general environment. So there's that part of it, and because of the nature of the frames that need to be shipped and that they're on a truck coming up, there are certain limitations in terms of how you would lay out that space and where your utilities would run. So it's just it'll make you work in a little bit of a different fashion potentially. But all in all, they can do some pretty amazing things with how they lay out that environment. But if a stick-built environment is going to give you just a couple more accesses of freedom in terms of how you design and build.
Yeah, you got some geometries you got to work with.
Right.
I mean, up here in New England, where people like to use old facilities and retrofit a lot of stuff, that makes things a little bit more complicated.
Been through a couple of those projects.
Yeah. I think I just saw somebody put something up about they used an old mill building, and they're it's really it's kind of hip up here in New England to take the old mill buildings and turn them into something new, which I think is, I always think they're beautiful. Like to see that old brick building on the river, and then you walk in and it looks like it's from 2030.
I agree, but having taken an old warehouse that was for heavy equipment for building the Mass Pike and turning it into a biotech facility that's state of the art facility of the future and winning ISP facility of future awards, it's not easy. And the return on keeping those 2 walls, 3 walls, 4 walls, whatever, is pretty limited.
Yeah, just to keep it looking like it used to. It's easier just to take it down and build a new one, probably, huh?
Yeah, I mean, with some of the available shells that they can put up nowadays, it certainly makes you less confined by the geometry of the existing building. So
yeah. All right, cool. Well, so maybe we already touched on this a little bit, but your office up there, you're in Chelmsford, right? That's where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in Chelmsford. Well, yeah.
When we're not in this environment, yeah.
Yeah. So your office, you guys have a full team for doing projects, delivering projects. What at this point do you think you guys do maybe more unique than some other companies that are out there? What do you guys think that is unique about your team there? And I know you've worked at all these other places, and so you've got a lot of exposure probably to different engineering firms and to different methodologies. So what's something that you guys think you guys are doing different right now?
I'd say our subject matter expertise is really part of our trademark right now, and the fact that we've not only got a fantastic crew of resources in New England, but we've got a plethora of global resources to call upon, and IPS is truly a subject matter expertise focused company, and they tend to invest in that realm and take people who have worked on the owner side of the company and bring them over to IPS in order to make it a team that has lived in the shoes of the customer. So myself, 22 years of working on the owner's side before I came over to projects. So I know what is going on behind the eyes of the customer when I'm talking to them, and they're thinking about, well, how am I going to be able to put this together in a way that, I can maintain this pump. I can do product changeovers. I can keep the suite up while in operation. So we have that experience. And I think that's a big part of it is, we have a lot of people that have spent their entire lives on the design side, and they really know how to do that effort. And then we have a good chunk of us that came from the owner's side, and that collaboration has helped, I think, both of us to do our jobs better. So that's where I feel like we bring a lot of value to our customers.
Yeah, and I met with people from your company all up and down the East Coast anyway. So I've seen a lot of that subject matter expertise in action at different projects, and just visiting your offices and talking to guys like you. So yeah, I agree.
And you just had Eric on recently, another one of our strong SMEs,
one of the young up and comers. I felt old talking to Eric. I don't know. He's probably not even that much younger than me, but
no, he takes good care of himself.
Yeah, and his hair is way better than mine. So for sure,
we're all getting hockey flow during the COVID shutdown, right? Maybe not all of us, but.
Oh man. All right. So a couple other questions. I know this is our redo, so we're gonna sort of rehash a couple things, but something that is a question I've enjoyed talking to people about. Everybody sort of has a different take on it, but what's something that you're excited about right now in our industry? There's a lot of changes. We were just talking about modular clean rooms as an example of something that's been growing and sort of evolving. There's competing technologies that are kind of doing the opposite. It's almost trying to get rid of the clean room in some respects and make everything aseptic, enclosed. So what's something that you see that's really exciting and that you're involved in at IPS right now?
So continuous manufacturing, I believe, is a really impressive efficiency that brings to the process. And you're right, it gives us the ability to do a lot of ballroom manufacturing and keep unit ops and different products potentially in the same environment because it's in a closed disposable system, and the efficiencies that we've been able to see in terms of the new harvesting mechanisms and continuous capture systems that bring our amount of solutions, buffers, and medias that we need to produce significantly, like 90% less than previous conventional stainless steel systems. That's an incredible environment game changer. The cell and gene therapy side of the business is something that I'm really starting to get a little more exposure to. Eric, as you had on, is doing an awful lot of work in that environment, and he is doing a series to train the rest of the engineering staff at IPS to bring us along, so we're as knowledgeable as him in what is the process and the needs of that process and the environment that process it requires, and what are the different types of equipment that exist and at the different scales, and what is the product for look like when it's for one person versus when it's for many people, and that again is going to call on a lot of the disposable technologies and that whole closed system, especially because you could potentially have two entirely different products, one for patient A and one for patient B, within 6 feet of each other. It's got to be in a closed system. So it's that direction of the industry is really exciting. And when I first heard of cell and gene therapy, I really didn't feel that it made a lot of sense that we would be focusing, as the population grows over 8 billion people in the world, we're focusing on individualized therapy. It seemed like the opposite direction things would go. I know that it's amazing what they're able to do. And if you think of where the industry was prior to Genzyme coming onto the scene, there wasn't a market for people who required orphan drugs. There wasn't a market, a business case to create those drugs. Yeah. So it took some outside the box thinking to come up with a business case that created an environment which made it capable to save these patients who had these ailments, these orphan ailments. So this cell and gene therapy is just going to have to create an entirely new business case for it. And obviously there's some merit to it because the venture capital is flying off the shelf right now. People are investing in this and betting that the future is there for this product line. So
it does seem like everything's sort of getting really big and really small all at the exact same time, right?
Yeah.
It's like my easiest way of thinking about it, because the amount of like information and data required to do this is just so insanely bigger than what we've ever had in the past. And then at the same exact time, we're going down to the most individual, like literally a person's cell. Mm-hmm. So how do we treat that, right? And then have it replicate and all that. It's fascinating, and I think what you're saying is really key. Like, how do you create the business case? And then on the engineering side, right? I think in some ways, the engineering side is the most fascinating because, we've had these manufacturing processes for a long time. What we've done in BioPharma, it wasn't really new. It was just sort of adapted to BioPharma from other industries, like how you harvest and make different batches of things. Now you have to figure out how to, instead of make a million doses out of one, tank and pipes and all that. Now you have to, and that are all the same. Now you're making, ultimately the same amount of doses. Right now it's a lot smaller because of the way the technology is developing, but now we're making, and hopefully that same amount of doses, but every single one is different. Right. That's correct. I mean, really, that's a little bit mind blowing if you think about it.
And it's going to call on, we're looking at, we're seeing some of the things that are coming out with, that Lonza cocoon system. There's going to be robotics involved. There's going to be movement of materials and that are going to happen at a completely different level. And the environment's going to change entirely. Right now, it's very manual in operation, moving a lot of bags around and attaching them to different pieces of equipment. Eventually, I feel it's robotics that are going to come in and move that system. They've been talking about it for a long time. There's been a lot of projects that had these aspirations of using robotics for material movement.
Yep.
And they're slowly starting to take seed. Well, that environment is the small individualized therapy environment is just aching for that kind of solution, because there's just too much manipulation to have it all be manual and do it at an efficient pace if you're trying to serve a larger population of people.
Yeah. So do you see that more coming as a result of the marketplace, or an event, or what do you think is going to sort of push some of that over the line? I know it's already happening, but like there's always like big jumps that need to happen. What do you see as the next big jump? Do you think it's something like robotics as being the next big jump to make this more of a reality for everybody?
Well, we're finally getting approvals right now. So
Okay.
once the approvals start to happen and you start to see people, having their macular degeneration reversed, or, something, when a person who couldn't see before can now see, and everybody's going to
The adoption's going to go quick.
Yeah, people are going to be like, oh, wow, we really need to get, and that's just one of the incredible number of therapies. Can you imagine if they completely were able to solve diabetes, no longer needing to monitor your insulin and give yourself insulin levels, blood sugar monitoring, all out the window, completely gone. I mean, it seems like that'll be a ways down the road. I mean, there's obviously people still investing in massive infrastructure for that insulin and blood sugar based process. So I don't have a feeling that we're a little ways off from that, but that's the type of thing we're talking about. We're solving the problem rather than having therapies that we're continually manufacturing and putting into people.
Yeah, it's overwhelming to think about what could be down the line. I feel like I've seen some of those things in Star Trek and the like, but it just seems like that stuff is starting to actually happen. Like we're living through it. We're in a pretty unique time in history. Every time I hear a presentation on this stuff, it's all my brain's just going, we're living in Star Trek. I mean, it's starting to happen. We're not, traveling to galaxies, but all the other stuff, it feels like it's finally happening. We all had the same stuff, and we were supposed to be in flying cars, and we don't have them still, right? We're a little disappointed that we don't have flying cars, but they're starting to invent medicines that you inject and everything sort of reverses inside of your body. That is incredible. It's incredible.
It really is. It's amazing. And the technology's been around for a while. The work in the labs have been going on for a long time. It hasn't come as fast even for this as people had predicted it would. We're not in bubble cars, and we're still not able to go to our doctor and get this therapy. But it's coming, I wonder how COVID is going to affect the timeline of that. When I think about, that goes back to that same question. There's 8 billion people now that are going to need a vaccine. A lot of the horsepower investment right now, at least from the government side, is going to be in trying to get that accomplished. So is there going to be an impact on timelines for the cell and gene therapy companies when, a lot of the resources are focused now on trying to solve this riddle, therapies and vaccines around COVID. So, but then again, you're taking a lot of people away from their work environment, putting them in their houses where they're spending a heck of a lot more time thinking about interesting ways to solve problems. It's probably going to be a creativity juggernaut that comes out of this as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. You don't know you never know what's gonna come out of a big event. You just know something's gonna. There'll probably be some bad stuff, but ultimately you'll leave people alone to think for a long time, and they come up with ideas, right? Because you just separated them from the sort of the urgency of the daily grind that they're used to, and their brain starts spinning in a different way, right? So I don't know. I think it was a meme or something, but about Isaac Newton getting locked up in his room for a year because of some disease
with a bunch of mercury.
And he invented calculus, Like,
Right.
man, do I feel like I didn't get anything done the last 2 months.
Yeah.
So
Somebody's going to invent the new calculus right now. They're going to have to. It's a necessity to
yeah,
drive
and there's
invention.
so many people, working on things right now. So anyways, I think that's really fascinating. I expect to have a lot more conversations about what's going on in cell and gene therapy. There's just it's the branching of that tree is enormous, right?
Yeah.
Versus some of the major things we're used to seeing, and therapies that are out there. It seems like there's another company doing the same one. The amount of things that we could do because the individualized medicine is going to be pretty amazing.
Yeah. And just from a business development standpoint, trying to track down all these companies that are doing this, there is a colossal number of companies that are working in this environment, and all of them are funded. It's amazing. It really is. You just look at them all and what there's a whole complex of an industry just to give that pipeline of startups the fuel it needs to make the next step and find out if they're feasible or not. So we deal with real estate companies that have different environments where they take the companies through different stages, and the same subject matter experts are walking each company through each stage, and then if that didn't work, they go back to another company and try it again. And
Yeah.
It's interesting what's going on in Cambridge right now. Being a local boy, that's
who would have thought that they'd have buildings like that, like even
Yeah.
15 years ago? Because they do, right? They have these buildings where it's like, here's a lab, and then here's another lab, and you just sort of like,
Yeah.
it starts with one scientist, and then it's
Yeah.
three, and then it's,
Yeah,
8 with
exactly.
some admins. You're like, wow, this is amazing.
This is the phase where we throw on a CEO and a
Yeah.
CFO and a COO. Now we're off to here.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's great.
There's a playbook for it, the whole thing. It's pretty interesting. Somebody's got to write a Robin Cook-esque novel about that whole thing.
All right. So we gotta wrap this up, and I wanted to ask you this question. I had already done it once, so let's see if you give me a different answer.
All right.
But we've covered a lot of different subjects today, but just something unique to you. If you were to be able to go back in time 10 years or more, what's something that you think you'd tell your younger self? Again, we're talking professionally, not like, you should have been a professional basketball player or something, or hockey player in your case. So what's something you'd like to tell yourself 10 years ago that, you think would have served you well, and maybe, made things a little bit better, moving forward in your professional life?
The first time I told you, I think that patience was where I was at. And I believe that that's a big part of it. I think I heard one of your previous podcast members say that it was listening, and I think that's a big part of it. So patience, listening, and part of that listening is maintaining that network of people that I think I could have done a better job of. As we talked about, I have teams of people that I've worked with, great teams of people that I've worked with through the last 4 major companies I was at, and just continually fostering that environment of somebody I can call on when I have a question, somebody I can just go out and have a beer with and talk about what they're doing in their life right now that is working and it isn't working in terms of their professional environment. There's a lot to be gained by that interaction, and this social isolation of COVID just shows how impactful that interpersonal relationships are in maintaining your sense of direction in life. And I think that would probably be one of the more impactful things, is maintaining those friendships, the collaboration, that feedback between people who I've always been impressed by, mentors, throughout my life, and coworkers who have been at the same phase as me, and now we're off and doing amazing things at other companies. So just keeping that collaboration going, and not even for a, where could I be now if I had done that type of thing, but more for just how fulfilling it is to keeping that bond going.
Yeah. I think that's great. I like just what you threw in there at the end too, because there's always the I coulda, shoulda, woulda aspect to this, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, I have enjoyed just seeing certain people progress. Like, it's like, hey, isn't that awesome? Like, because when you're younger, you look and you see the people where they are or where they got to. You weren't part of that. But as you get a little bit older and you watch some of these people progress, be successful, do great things, it's like you got to be a part of it. And even if, you don't achieve the same, whatever that means, that same level, being a part of their life and part of their story, it's part of your story ultimately. So you get to say, hey, I remember him when, and I remember when he was kind of an idiot, but now look at him, look at how great he's done. I mean, it's neat. You do that with your kids, you do that with your kids, you're with your siblings. And sometimes I think we're a little bit shy of doing that in our professional lives, but I mean, we're all going to get old and gray together just a little bit, right? Some of us faster than others.
Yeah, it's getting there. I got lucky up here. It's not going as gray as fast. I got a couple in there. I'd really have to get close to the camera for you to see.
This is great for the podcast if they're listening to it. Look at me, stare at my head. All right. Hey, Brian, this was great. I'm so glad we're able to do this again. This turned out better, and you don't have San Francisco in the background. Just got the kids.
I liked having the Golden Gate back there.
It's all right. We're good with this, and I got my ping pong table as usual. So, but I appreciate your time today.
Jake's what do you Disney?
got?
My wife put a collage together for all the kids and their Disney trips.
That's great. Yeah, we always get all those pictures when you walk in the front gate and they take them. They're like, for $20, you can have this little 5x8. Like, I'm good, thanks. I got a phone, takes pictures.
That works.
All right, that was kind of rando. So, man. So, anyways, thanks so much for being on today. I know I'll see you again. I know we'll be talking again soon. But this was good, and I hope everybody enjoys getting to know Brian Duffy.
I've really been enjoying following your podcast. You're doing great with these. I'm impressed by your interview techniques, and you're just very easygoing, and it makes for some really interesting conversations. You can learn a lot by watching people through your conversations.
Thanks.
A lot of fun.
Hey, thanks. We'll do it again.
All right, definitely.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Thanks again for listening to the Modern BioPharma podcast. Please reach out if there is someone you'd like us to interview or a topic you'd like us to discuss. We will make it happen. And don't forget to like us on iTunes or subscribe on YouTube. It helps us get the word out. See you next time.